If you are a fast walker, the data suggests that you are, in almost every measurable way, winning at the game of life. But before you celebrate that fact, you need to understand the dark mechanism that is actually driving your success. Your walking speed is not just a quirky habit, it is a statistical signal of dominance that separates you from the rest of the population. However, this signal comes with a warning label that most people ignore until it is too late. Fast walkers have higher IQs than their slower peers, they earn higher salaries, and they report significantly higher levels of self-reported happiness. But there is a discrepancy in that data that psychologists have been trying to hide for decades. By almost every biological and sociological metric available to modern science, if you are a fast walker, you are a higher functioning organism. Yet you are likely suffering from a hidden symptom that you have mistakenly identified as a strength. You have an engine that is built for high performance, processing information faster, and solving complex problems quicker than those around you. But have you ever asked yourself what that engine is costing you in fuel? There is a hidden tax on that speed, a specific invisible cost that you're paying every single day, often without even realizing it until the bill comes due. You might feel the first payment of this tax as a sudden, sharp tightness in your chest when you're stuck behind a slow tourist group that has fanned out across the entire sidewalk like a human barricade. But that tightness isn't just annoyance, it is a biological alarm bell that we need to decode. You might feel it as a sudden flush of heat, a spike in blood pressure, when a red light takes 3 seconds too long to change, or when a revolving door spins just a fraction too slowly for your stride. You think this sensation is just who you are, but in the next few minutes I am going to prove to you that it is actually a symptom of a much deeper problem. You think you're just efficient, and you think you just have high standards for how the world should operate. But what if I told you that your efficiency is actually a defense mechanism against the silence you're afraid to face? In this video, I'm going to show you that your need for speed is actually the external manifestation of a hidden internal pathology. This pathology fundamentally rewires your perception of time, damages your most intimate relationships in ways you haven't noticed, and if left unchecked, exacts a heavy toll on your future. This is the psychology of the fast walker, and to understand it, we have to start by asking the one question you have been avoiding. What are you actually running from? To understand the engine that drives you, and to understand why you feel physically incapable of slowing down, we first have to validate the machine itself. But to do that, we have to look at a specific set of data that proves you aren't crazy for thinking everyone else is moving in slow motion. In 1972, researchers in New Zealand launched what would become one of the most ambitious and comprehensive human experiments in history. It is called the Dunedin Multidisciplinary Health and Development Study, but what they found 40 years later would change our understanding of human aging forever. The scope of this study was unprecedented in the scientific world because they didn't just observe people, they dissected their entire lives. They took 1,037 babies born in the same hospital within the same year, and they decided to track every single aspect of their existence, from birth until death. They didn't just ask them survey questions, they measured everything, tracking their IQ development, their liver function, and their dental health. But there was one specific variable they measured decades later that unlocked the secret of the fast walker. They mapped their social class, their relationship status, and their cortisol levels for decades to build a complete biological and psychological profile of a human life. But when these babies turned 45 years old, the researchers measured one final variable that shocked the scientific community. It wasn't a blood test and it wasn't a genetic marker, which is what makes the findings so unsettling. They simply asked the subjects to walk. They measured their gait speed, how fast they moved from point A to point B in a neutral setting without being told to rush, and the results were undeniable. The researchers found that they could predict with terrifying accuracy the cognitive health and the biological destiny of a person just by watching them walk to the grocery store. But why is walking speed so predictive of brain health? The findings were stark. The slow walkers showed signs of accelerated biological aging, meaning their lungs were weaker, their teeth were in worse condition, and their immune systems were compromised. But the most profound finding, the one that explains why you feel the way you do, was hidden inside their skulls. When the researchers conducted MRI scans on all the participants, they found the slow walkers had lower total brain volume. But what they found in the fast walkers is what you need to pay attention to. The slow walkers had thinner cerebral cortices and a reduction in the surface area of the brain, along with a higher volume of white matter hyperintensities. These are essentially small lesions or scars on the brain that indicate a decline in cognitive health, but your brain scans looked completely different. Your brain looked younger, and your fast walk is not just a habit, it is a signal of something scientists call system integrity. You have to understand that walking is not a simple task, it is a biomechanical miracle that requires massive computational power. To walk efficiently, your brain has to process visual data to scan the terrain, engage the vestibular system to maintain balance, and coordinate motor planning across dozens of muscle groups. But if you can do all of that at high speed, it means your central nervous system is firing at maximum capacity. It means your processor is fast, your connection speeds are high, and your biological age is likely years younger than your chronological age. So, when people tell you to slow down for your health, they are scientifically incorrect, because you are a biological Ferrari built for speed. But here is where the story changes, and this is the part the Dunedin study didn't warn you about. You can't drive a Ferrari in a school zone without damaging the engine, and you can't live life at 100 miles per hour in a 30 mile per hour world without paying a psychological price. While your brain is high functioning, your psychology is likely suffering from a condition identified in the 1950s by two cardiologists, Maya Friedman and Ray Rosenman. But they weren't looking for psychological conditions. They were looking for something much more physical. They were heart doctors studying the causes of coronary heart disease, which at the time was thought to be purely a result of diet and smoking. But Friedman and Rosenman noticed something bizarre about the furniture in their waiting room that would flip modern medicine on its head. They noticed that the upholstery on the chairs in their waiting room was wearing out in a very peculiar pattern that didn't make sense. The fabric wasn't worn down on the backrests, where a relaxed patient would lean back and wait for their name to be called. It was destroyed on the front edges of the seats, and the armrests were tattered not from resting, but from gripping. Their patients were literally sitting on the edge of their seats, ready to bolt, vibrating with physiological arousal and preparing for a threat that never came. Friedman and Rosenman realized that these patients shared a specific personality architecture. They coined the Type A behavior pattern. But the core symptom of this personality, the thing that truly defines you as a fast walker, is a specific cognitive distortion called hurry sickness. Hurry sickness is defined clinically as a continuous struggle, an unremitting attempt to accomplish or achieve more and more things in less and less time. But why does this make you walk fast? If you're a fast walker, you suffer from a cognitive distortion called time famine. And this distortion fundamentally alters your reality compared to a slow walker. To a slow walker, what psychologists call a Type B personality, time is a river that flows, renews itself, and is abundant. To you, time is a vanishing resource, a bucket with a hole in the bottom that is constantly leaking away. Every second you spend walking between tasks feels like a theft, and it feels like you're bleeding out. When you're stuck behind a slow walker in the airport, moving at a glacial pace and blocking the moving walkway, you aren't just annoyed. You feel a visceral sense of loss. You are doing a subconscious calculation called opportunity cost, but have you ever stopped to analyze what you're actually calculating? You are thinking about the email you could be writing, the call you could be making, or the problem you could be solving. You treat the walk to the coffee shop as dead time, the commute to work as dead time, and even the hallway walk to the bathroom as dead time. You are constantly trying to minimize the transition to maximize the event, but this mindset has a fatal flaw. This relentless efficiency creates a permanent gap between you and the rest of the world, and that gap is where the pain lives. Because life is almost entirely made of transition times, and if you hate transitions, you essentially hate 90% of your life. The big events, the promotion, the wedding, the vacation, those are tiny fleeting blips on the radar of your existence. 99% of your life is the walk between the events, but you're trying to skip the walk. By rushing the transition, you are rushing your own existence, becoming a ghost in your own life, who haunts the present moment but never actually inhabits it. But why does it feel so painful, and why does waiting actually hurt you physically? This brings us to the mechanism. Why does the world feel so unbearably slow to you, and why does a slow internet connection make you want to punch a wall? It's not because you are arrogant, it's because of a specific chemical in your brain. We all have an internal clock, which is not a metaphor but a biological mechanism, largely governed by the basal ganglia and the neurotransmitter dopamine. Research suggests that people with higher baseline dopamine levels, which correlates with high motivation, actually have a faster internal clock. This creates a phenomenon called time dilation, which means your reality is literally playing at a different frame rate. Your subjective experience of a second is actually shorter than that of a slow walker, because you're processing visual data and running simulations much faster. You are overclocking your processor, but the world around you is running on dial-up. So, when you are forced to walk at someone else's pace, you're watching a video that is buffering. You know that visceral irritation when a web page won't load and the little circle spins and spins? That is what you feel when you're walking behind a tourist, and you aren't angry at them as a human being. You are angry at the lag. You are living in a different time zone than the people around you, watching people move through molasses and make decisions that should take milliseconds take seconds. Because your brain craves input and progress, this lack of speed registers in the brain as a threat, but it gets worse. Neuroimaging studies have shown that when people with high time urgency are forced to wait, the anterior insula lights up. This is critical, because the anterior insula is the part of the brain associated with physical pain and disgust. You are not being dramatic, you're physically hurting, and your brain is treating a slow walker like a physical injury. But biology is only half the story, because you haven't just inherited this speed, you have been infected by it. In 1999, a psychologist named Robert Levine conducted a massive study called The Pace of Life to see if entire cities had tempos. He travelled to 31 different nations and measured 3 specific variables to determine the pulse of a culture. But what he found linked walking directly to money. First, he measured the walking speed of pedestrians over a distance of 60 feet, looking for people walking alone and unencumbered during business hours. Second, he measured the speed of service at post offices. And third, he measured the accuracy of public clocks to see if they were synchronized. What he found was a direct mathematical correlation between the walking speed of a city's pedestrians and its economic vitality. He found a near-perfect correlation between walking speed and gross domestic product, GDP, which implies that your walk is not your own. If you live in a high economic hub, New York, London, Tokyo, Singapore, you have been infected by social entrainment. You are physically mimicking the economic anxiety of your city, and your body has become a reflection of the stock market. In these environments, the cultural equation is explicit. Time equals money. Therefore, slowness equals poverty, and you have internalized this equation so deeply that you don't even realize you're doing it. You walk fast because you are competing for space on the sidewalk and for the limited commodity of time. You have adopted the urban stride, a gait that is aggressive, guarded, and rapid. But do you know what that stride signals to other animals? You look straight ahead, you do not make eye contact, and you move with ballistic intent. But why do you move like you are hunting, even when there is nothing to kill? Anthropologists have suggested that humans have 2 distinct modes of attention when moving through the world, dating back to our hunter-gatherer origins. There is the gatherer mode, which is a wide-focus state where you need to move slowly to scan the ground for berries and tracks. You need peripheral vision, and you need to be open to distraction, because if you move too fast, you miss the resource. The gatherer meanders, the gatherer is present, and the gatherer is safe. Then there is the hunter mode, which is a narrow focus state where you have a target and a destination. When you're hunting, speed is not a luxury. Speed is a survival mechanic, because to slow down is to lose the food and fail. You need foveal vision, tunnel vision, and you need to shut out all distractions. If you are a fast walker, you are stuck in hunter mode, running ancient software in a modern world. But the problem is there is no prey, and you're hunting a target that doesn't exist. The prey is a meeting, the prey is a coffee order, or the prey is getting home to sit on the couch. You are applying life or death tactical intensity to mundane logistical tasks, and you are hunting your own life. But the cost of this permanent hunting state is usually paid by the people who love you. There is a concept in relationship psychology called the pace mismatch, and it explains why your relationships often feel like work. If you are a fast walker, you almost certainly have a partner, a child, or a friend who moves slower than you, because the universe balances us out. But in the day-to-day, you treat this balance like a burden, and it is eroding your connections. When you walk with them, be honest with yourself. Do you walk beside them, or do you walk a half step ahead? You physically lead and pull them along, and you might check your pace for a moment to match them. But within 30 seconds, your autopilot kicks in and you drift forward again. You are dragging them in your wake, and you think you are being helpful. You think you are leading the way and being efficient for the group. But do you know how that feels to them? It feels like rejection. When you walk a step ahead of someone, you're sending a primal non-verbal signal that says, my destination is more important than your company. You are signaling that being with them is less valuable than getting away from here, and that message lands deep in their subconscious. Over years, this creates a subtle, corrosive resentment that makes the people around you feel like anchors that you have to tolerate. It makes them feel like obstacles in your path, and eventually they stop trying to catch up. You become a solo sprinter in a world designed for marathon runners, isolating yourself in a bubble of speed where no one else can reach you. So, how do we fix this before it destroys your relationships? The data says you are a genius, but the psychology says you are stressed, and the relationship dynamics say you are lonely. How do you keep the biological advantage without the psychological cost? Most self-help gurus and most well-meaning friends will tell you to slow down and smell the roses. That is bad advice. If you are a high RPM machine, if you're biologically wired for speed, forcing yourself to move like a sloth is inauthentic and will not make you calm. It will make you neurotic because you cannot fake a leisurely pace when your mind is doing 4,000 calculations a minute. The dissonance between your body and your mind will only increase your anxiety, so we need a different approach. The solution is not slowness, the solution is cadence control. You need to decouple your speed from your anxiety, and you need to ask yourself, what fuels your walk? Right now, you walk fast because you are running away from a deficit, running from the fear of being late, and running from the silence that catches up to you when you stop. You need to switch the fuel source and walk fast because you're running toward vitality. There is a specific protocol for this, a mental drill that you can practice tomorrow called the 10% deceleration rule. The next time you're walking down the street and you feel that sidewalk rage bubbling up, you see the tourist and you feel the heat in your chest, catch it. Acknowledge the sensation, don't judge it, but simply notice that your body has entered threat mode. And then deliberately slow your pace by just 10%. You aren't stopping, you aren't crawling, and you aren't meandering. You are just easing off the red line. You are shifting from 5th gear down to 4th gear, and in that moment, you are doing something profound for your brain. You are sending a top-down signal from your prefrontal cortex to your amygdala. You are telling your primitive brain, I am safe, I am not being chased. The world will not end if I arrive 14 seconds later. By voluntarily reducing your speed, even by a fraction, you regain agency, and you prove to yourself that you're in control of time. You must also learn to reframe the concept of waiting. Because you have high conscientiousness, you hate waste, and waiting feels like dead time. But what if you reframed it as charging? When you're stuck in line at the grocery store, or stuck behind a slow walker, instead of checking your phone, use that moment as a free interval. The universe has handed you 60 seconds of zero expectations where you don't have to solve a problem or be productive. Stand still, ground your feet, and take one deep breath, even if it feels excruciating at first. It feels like burning because you're addicted to the rush, but if you can hold the tension, you build a new kind of strength called callousness to waiting. But why does this matter so much, and why am I telling you that you need to learn to downshift? Because we left out one detail from Robert Levine's study on the pace of life, and it is the detail that matters most. While the cities with the fastest walkers had the strongest economies and the highest IQs and the most innovation, they also had the highest rates of coronary heart disease. The same engine that drives your success is the engine that burns you out, and you're trading your heart health for your GDP. You are trading your cortisol levels for your salary, and that is a trade you will eventually lose. Hurry! Sickness is not just a personality quirk, it is a state of chronic sympathetic nervous system arousal. And if you run an engine at the red line for 40 years, eventually the gasket blows. So, you are going to walk fast for the rest of your life, because that is your nature. You are a hunter, you are a mover, and you are a thinker, and the world needs people like you. The world relies on your urgency to innovate, to fix, to arrive, and to build. So your speed is a gift, but you do not have to be a slave to your own engine. There is a dignity in speed, but there is a wisdom in rhythm. And the most powerful river is not the one that floods and destroys its banks in a chaotic rush. It is the one that moves with deep, consistent, unstoppable force. Walk fast because you're alive, and walk fast because you're capable. But never walk so fast that you leave your own soul behind. Never walk so fast that you cannot see the faces of the people you love. And never walk so fast that you forget that the walk itself is not just the price you pay to get to the future. It is the life you're living right now. Check your pace, take a breath, and keep moving. But this time, move on your own terms.